On a lonely country road in the American state of Maryland, a strange creature has been giving locals the fright of their lives, a beast known as the Goat Man.
It looked like a human with some horns or something.
It was like big, white, and had red eyes, and I just stood there and started looking at it.
For more than 4 decades, a creature half man, half goat has reportedly haunted the woods of Prince George's County. The Goat Man has been blamed for killing dogs, harassing teenagers, and according to one story, even decapitating a man. Animal X went to the east coast of the United States and the town of Bowie, just 40 kilometers from the nation's capital, Washington. The Beltsville Agricultural Research Center is the place many people associate with the birth of the Goat Man. An experiment is said to have gone wrong, and a researcher who conducted tests on goats went mad, retreating into the woods and taking on the appearance of a goat, or so the local legend goes. The first sighting of the Goat Man came in 1957. Washington newspapers reported the hunt for a gorilla-like animal in Prince George's County. A local couple were on their way home when they had an unexpected encounter with a long-haired creature in their driveway. As they approached their home, the animal appeared briefly, then fled into the bush. The hunt for the abominable phantom was on. Then, in the late 60s, Audrey Havis was driving through Beltsville when she came upon a huge hair-covered creature standing in the middle of the road. She claims when she came to a stop, the creature banged on the front of her car. She sped off as it disappeared into the woods. Another well-known legend attributes the Goatman with even more sinister characteristics. Legend has it that a teenage couple were parked on the notorious Fletchertown Road on the outskirts of Bowie when they noticed a strange creature in the woods. The young man left his girlfriend in the car while he got out to investigate. He never returned. His severed head was found hanging in the trees above the car, apparently a victim of the Goat Man.
Teenagers and preteens tell each other this, and they know it in high school. They go out to these sites, as we mentioned, they talk about the legend. They might get into the car and go out to where a Goat Man was seen, or maybe even go out to try to look for him.
A lot of teenagers have been terrified in this way. There is no evidence that the Goat Man has ever killed anybody, but he has reportedly chased prying youngsters with an axe. One local resident recalls the stories from his high school years. The mysterious tales come from the Fletchertown Road.
It would be in the evening when the sun would go down. Usually it happened at night, but they would claim that someone had aroused them out of the back of the car or whatever, and he came to be known as the Goat Man.
The Goat Man was also said to have a passion for killing dogs. Local papers reported fears that the beast had killed a dog in Old Bowie in 1971. Near the Goatman's favorite haunt, the Fletchertown Road, 2 local men found the dog's severed head. One of the men, John Hayden, went on to claim he'd seen a beast in the area completely covered in hair, possibly the Goat Man. For many local residents, the Fletchertown Road holds a grisly and unexplained reputation.
It was in the 60s and 70s, and till they did the road over, it used to be a real little narrow country lane. And they used to find bodies quite frequently there, maybe once a week or even more.
No one knows where they came from, nor who was responsible. Some blame crime-related violence spilling out of Washington. But was it the work of the Goat Man? The creature has made more recent appearances in Bowie. Sean Fletcher was driving through town when he spotted something very unusual.
When I got by the Catholic church, I seen something dart across the road. I mean, I swerved a little bit, and I was looking in the woods as it was going, going through the woods. And I was like, man, I ain't know what that. It looked like a human with some horns or something. I believe what I seen. Now, whether, I'm quite sure it was something out of the regular that I ain't see every day,
James Gill recalled seeing an 8-foot-tall hairy creature one night when he was walking along Route 197, another popular haunt of the legendary goat man.
There's like a ditch down there, and there's like a bunch of thorn bushes and stuff. And I looked over, I heard something and everything, and I looked over, and there was like a big, huge white thing over there. And I didn't know what it was at first. And I probably figured that, maybe the goat man or something.
Skeptics blame the goat man legend on an old hermit who used to wander the railway tracks with a double-bladed axe. Ray Hayden recalls his reputation.
He was a mean old man, according to people in the area, and that they called him the goat man.
The hermit has long since died, but the stories of the goat man persist. Descriptions of a creature half man, half goat conjure up more sinister images. The horns and hooves are reminiscent of the devil himself.
If hooves suggest that the goat man came from another realm, they're not unusual in this next story from the world of racing. But there was something very strange about the life and mysterious death of a racehorse named Farlap.
In 1930, life in Australia was tough. Jobs were hard to get, money was scarce, but there was a guaranteed way of making some cash. If you could scrape together a shilling, a pound, or a fiver, you could put it on a horse. Not just any horse, but a horse that was bound to win. A sure thing. Farlap. While he lived, his record was glorious, but the strange circumstances around his death in a foreign land began a mystery that is still debated today. Was the greatest horse in Australia poisoned by his own vet? Was he slipped some deadly feed? Was he killed by the mafia?
A lot of Australians believed that he had been poisoned.
Farlap had a mysterious death overseas at a time when the population was desperate for heroes.
Animal X begins its investigation in Melbourne, Victoria, where the Farlap legend began. In 38 races, he won 34 times, including winning 14 races in a row.
They kept testing him more and more. They gave him bigger weights to carry and longer races, and at one stage he won 5 races in a week. So they worked him very, very hard.
Perhaps Farlap's inspiration came from this man, stable boy Tommy Woodcock. Farlap and Woody, as he was known, were inseparable. By 1930, Farlap was a hero. After all, he was winning just about every race. But he was making enemies, too. Bookmakers were losing a fortune. Payouts were huge.
Farlap was the only horse to have been favourite for the Melbourne Cup 3 times in a row.
After winning Australia's classic race, trainer Harry Telford and owner David Davies decided to send Farlap to America to race in the prestigious and well-paid Aqua Caliente Cup. But not everyone wanted to see Farlap leave the country.
Many Australians were really opposed to the idea of sending Farlap overseas. There was a fear, I think, even before Farlap left, that he would never come back.
Farlap won so convincingly that some said he wouldn't be allowed to live. Racing in the USA at that time was a tough business, controlled by the mob, the mafia. Woody and Farlap had traveled to a stable at Menlo Park in California. At 4:30 a.m. on the 5th of April, 1932, Farlap woke with a slight temperature. Veterinarian William Nielsen, who had also traveled with Farlap from Australia, treated the horse, but it became much worse. Nielsen left to seek another opinion. Just after midday, in great agony, Farlap died, Woody threw himself on the horse and cried.
When the horse died, the nation stopped. There's an account that the Prime Minister was in a meeting that was interrupted, and he was informed that the horse had died in the United States.
The two most persistent theories were that he'd been deliberately fed damp oats which brought on a fatal attack of colic, or that there were poison clay pellets in his stall. Two autopsies only deepened the mystery. Nielsen, the vet, blamed a bout of colic for the death, even though there was no food in Farlap's stomach. The U.S. authorities then officially declared that the death was caused by the spraying of nearby trees with lead arsenate. A nation mourned as Farlap returned to Australia. His hide was preserved and has been exhibited at the Australian Museum since 1932. This is more like a shrine than an exhibit, with relics of his racing days alongside his huge frame. His heart, too, was preserved and displayed in Canberra. Generations of Australians have been told the legend and gazed at this huge heart, one of the biggest of any racehorse before or since.
It captured the hearts and the minds, the imaginations of the population, and has been there ever since. And I guess the mystery of its death has only added to that.
Whether it was malicious intent or a simple mistake that ended the life of one of the world's greatest racehorses, no one will ever know. Perhaps there is only one sure thing about this case. Farlap really was a legend.
Farlap's extraordinary success on the racetrack is difficult to explain, but the strange powers of some other animals simply defy belief. After the break, Animal X examines the evidence that some pets can predict the future.
You could call them telepathic, you could say it's a sixth sense. I mean, these are just words for something we don't understand.
Welcome back to Animal X. They're our best friends, faithful and always there. But is it possible that some know more about us than we know about them? In the first of two special reports, we investigate the strange powers that many pets have.
Throughout history, they've been renowned for their uncanny ability to sense certain things, most notably, impending disaster. Countless animals have been credited with saving lives, often during incredible feats of endurance. It's claimed that even nature's tiniest creatures have a sixth sense, and that they too can predict catastrophes like earthquakes. But is it possible for them to read our minds, know our intentions? New research suggests they can, and over great distances and periods of time. Animal X went to London to meet the man at the center of a controversial scientific experiment into animal behavior. His name, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a former researcher at Cambridge University, now working as an experimental biologist. He hopes the results of his experiments will help revolutionize our understanding of animals and nature.
I'm saying it's time we started looking at our animals, taking our animals seriously, and learning what they can teach us and what they can tell us.
In his quest to explore the unexplained powers of animals, Dr. Sheldrake has been investigating pets that know when their owners are returning home. It's a subject that he initially researched for his book, 7 Experiments That Could Change the World. In it, he gives case histories of pet owners who've experienced the phenomena of their animals reacting days, sometimes weeks ahead of their return home. His latest research has added more weight to the theory that some animals do have a psychic link with their owners and will react well in advance to them coming home. He has collected more than 2,000 cases, many of which are incredible.
But we've found cases of dogs that know when their owners are coming home from, say, from New York to England, and react when they're getting on a plane at JFK Airport in New York. This is when people have been away on holidays. When people have been away for longish periods, the pets often react hours in advance, and this quite often corresponds with them getting on a plane or flying home from thousands of miles away.
So how can animals know what we're thinking? Dr. Sheldrake bases this mysterious ability on a scientific term called morphic fields, which work in a similar way to radio and television transmissions. These fields are invisible. You can't see them in the air, but animals can pick up on them, thereby tuning into our thought patterns. But Dr. Sheldrake says more work is needed to find out just how powerful they really are. To test his theories, Dr. Sheldrake has employed researchers like David Brown. He works out of Santa Cruz in California and has spoken to hundreds of people who claim to have pets that can predict when they're coming home. David's background is in psychobiology, and he's written a number of articles on the psychic pets phenomenon, in particular, how animals can predict earthquakes. David has been busy collecting case studies. He's even found a pet mouse that has alerted its owner to several tremors. In each case, the animal has acted out of character, becoming wild, agitated, hiding, or disappearing altogether in the lead up to a quake.
It's almost undoubtedly true that animals are picking up on something. Maybe not before every earthquake, maybe not in every case, but there's enough anecdotal evidence, hundreds of years of it, to really show that there's something significant going on. Part of the evidence for that is that animals do respond to electrical airborne particles, and that also there seems to be that animals like fish or animals in the water respond first, then land animals, and then birds in the air. So it seems like it's actually radiating upwards, whatever the effect is, whatever the stimulus is that's causing this effect.
As for pets anticipating their owner's return, Dr. Sheldrake has compared results from random surveys in 3 very different areas: Santa Cruz, California, the rural town of Ramsbottom in England, and urban North London. He's compiled some amazing statistics.
The remarkable thing is that we've come up with very similar patterns in such different environments. Dogs that know when their owners are coming home. In Ramsbottom and in London, 46% of dog owners, exactly the same percentage, said their dog seems to know when a member of the family is coming home. In Santa Cruz, the percentage was 52%. So we could say that roughly 1 dog out of 2 seems to know when its owner's coming home. We're talking about something that's a very common phenomenon.
Among those who've spoken to Dr. Sheldrake is Sandy Ward, who lives in the county of Devon in southwest England. Over the years, her dog, Charlie, has shown all the classic signs of a psychic pet. She says Charlie knows when her husband Brian is about to leave work and come home, usually on a Friday, even though he travels from London about 400 kilometers away.
I just have a dog that knows it's Friday. She doesn't do this any other evening. She'll lay with me on the sofa most evenings. She will play. She will go upstairs and lay upstairs. But try getting her off her beanbag on a Friday evening.
Normally, what happens is this. Come Friday evening, Brian will telephone his work colleagues to say he's heading off home. Times vary, but it's often around 6 o'clock. The Wards have kept a log of Charlie's movements and say that when Brian decides to call it a day, Charlie knows it's time to head for her beanbag by the window and wait for her owner. It can take Brian 5.5 hours to drive home, and Charlie will wait dutifully on her beanbag the whole time. And Sandy says somehow Charlie will know if there's been a change of schedule.
Brian thought he'd come home Thursday evening instead of Friday and spend the day with friends and surprise us. And we had friends, we were eating, where's Charlie, on her bed, and she laid there, and I told her it was the wrong evening. Silly dog, it's Thursday, not Friday. And about 11:30, Brian walked in. So she knew, and I didn't, because he didn't tell me he was coming home.
Is Charlie really psychic? Capable of reading Brian's thoughts from 400 kilometers away? Well, certainly Dr. Sheldrake thinks so.
You could call Shelley's reactions psychic, you could call them telepathic, you could say it's a sixth sense. I mean, these are just words for something we don't understand. So, I mean, I don't mind what anyone calls it, but it's certainly not ordinary behavior based on the normal five senses.
Another Friday evening. An Animal X decides to monitor Charlie to see just what she does. It's almost 7:15, and she's been on her beanbag now for about an hour. Time passes, and she lies patiently by the front window. Finally, 5.5 hours later, the reunion she's been waiting for. Her master is home. He'd left work at 6 o'clock. Charlie had predicted correctly yet again. Dr. Sheldrake says once we find out exactly how our pets make predictions, we could develop machines that do it better. And in the case of earthquakes, lives could be saved.
We'd understand a great deal more about animal nature, both in domestic animals and in wild animals, if we pay attention to these phenomena. Obviously, we'll learn nothing by neglecting them or by pretending they don't exist.